Well, it's just
comparisons.
sad how just because there's a little bit of difference of opinion on a politic or a religious belief or a, what should and shouldn't be done in a certain situation, we allow that to make us act less human to each other.
Mm-hmm. Hey there, Nomads of Lore. I'm Sean.
And I'm Jonathan.
And together we are Mead and Mischief, your home away from no home.
No home at all.
We are going to be talking in this video about the Stormlight Archive. We're going to be doing everything from chapter 14 all the way through 27 in this video, including everything in between there and all the things. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to talk about lots of different insights and a lot of different ideas and quotes and fun things. We're talking about foreshadowings and futures and hints and probably some crabs or something. I don't know. It's gonna be a good time. So there are a handful of things before we get started that I want to make sure you know. First of all, if talking about the Stormlight Archive is something you like to do, you should totally hit that subscribe button, and you're welcome to like this video as well. That would be really, really great. If you want to join us in a more expansive capacity, we have a Discord. The link for that is in the, I almost said in the denominator. I went in math video mode for some reason. In the description below, there is a link to.
We're getting bonus
Discord
material, guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Bonus.
We're bonus. If I start talking about polynomials, just tell me to quit.
Okay. All right.
So, anyway, in the description, there is a link to our Discord where we like to talk about the Stormlight Archive and the Wheel of Time and all of these things. It's a great time. And there's also a link to our Patreon. In there, we have some unique content, some Discord roles, and we have some weekly video content that is exclusive to our patrons there as well. I didn't say this yet. So before we get started, one more thing is our next section for in 2 weeks is we are going to be reading through chapter 42 of The Way of Kings.
28 through 42.
Yeah, 28 through 42 of The Way of Kings. And so we hope you'll join us in 2 weeks as well for even more Way of Kings content.
Let's get started.
So you talked last time about you really liked Wit and Renarin and all of that. I thought that at the beginning of this section, there's an even better scene that I think even better encapsulates that idea of Wit noticing, and it's absolutely hilarious with Renarin and him, and I also noted, and I feel like I've thought about this before, but Wit is obnoxious to all the High Princes, right?
Oh yeah,
I mean that's true.
Yeah,
but he is absolutely awful to Sadeas. Like you can tell, like with some of the other High Princes, it kind of feels like kind of wheedling to like you're being dumb, and I can see you're being dumb.
And I'm
do better.
I'm gonna make fun of your being dumb.
You do better with Sadeas. You get the impression that no, he hates Sadeas. Mm-hmm. And no, he's not kidding. Yeah. Not even like it's not like I ain't playing. You're
a terrible person.
You're a terrible person, and you're terrible to people and whatever else. And so he's giving Sadeas grief and whatever else, and then turns it to Renarin, and of course Dalinar again. Oh no, whatever. And then I love Renarin. Renarin, we know so little about at this point in the series. He's such an interesting character, over the course of all of these books, and this is one of the first times. It's hilarious. What does he say? He says, what does he say? Oh, nothing. Yeah,
nothing ridiculous.
Nothing ridiculous. Can you?
Yeah.
Can you?
Yeah. Can you say something?
Can you say nothing ridiculous?
Yeah. Nothing ridiculous.
Nothing.
Well,
which was Yep.
Actually, I guess you would do pretty good as me.
Yeah, which is hilarious.
It is.
It's funny because we see Wit several times auditioning new apprentices. It feels like we see that with Renarin a little bit, and we see that with Shallan heavily, and whatever at one point, and whatever else, and kind of looking at that, which is interesting. Which is one more reason, we see this is not a Sunlit Man video, but where is him getting to that point of being broken there? 'Cause I can't imagine how Sigil feels being not that anymore. I'd like to know what happened with that and more details about that. But
yeah, for sure.
That's not really this section. So there's several different. We get 2 or 3 different passages from the in-universe Way of Kings. Noadon writing that and whatever else. And this, we joke. You made the joke, and we both made it off camera before, and that. This is a self-help book and that's and there's a lot of truth to the I don't know about self-help, but it is a book on leadership and a book on learning. There's a lot of things to be learned. You can see various leadership people and whoever you want to ascribe to. You could see them making some of the same points, and so we get this passage that's really interesting on leadership and where Noadon, the king, is walking, and he's musing on the person, the king, nobody wanting to help carry the king's burden because it's too much and whatever else, and then he sees this poor guy, this poor laborer carrying a stone. Or something, whatever, shirtless wretch carrying a stone and doing these things and deciding and it's interesting, his motivation. Noadon says, I'm going to go help him because he needs help, and maybe if I help him, people will see that and help me. And not to get we try to stray away from politics, and this will be won't be Democrat or Republican or anything else, but. It reminds me of, and it's not just politics, it's leadership in general, but looking at this and looking at leaders and looking at the high princes, there's a lot of discussion of bad leaders in the high princes and these people being bad leaders that are not leading well and not guiding their people, and I think that it really, reading that particular passage really struck me thinking about our country and thinking about the leaders in our country and the reasons why people are untrusting of government. And it's because they're not leading like this. And so the first thought was, I always try to look at things and see things from other people's point of view and to try to see things that way. And sometimes better at it and sometimes not. But and trying to, thinking, it is difficult to be a leader, even, to be a good leader, and it's lonely at the top, to put cliche on it a little bit. It is, there's a lot making these big decisions for a nation like the United States for doing all these. It's not, we often, it's especially in this charged environment and society that we're in right now. It's easy to just start throwing out platitudes or one-liners or your favorite pop political slogan or whatever. It's easy to be like, oh well, it's this, and if you just did this or
Make
whatever
America
else.
great again.
Or whatever. It's all the different things. Make America great again, or Bidenomics, or whatever else. And all the things. It's very tempting, especially we've talked about echo chambers before. So on the one hand, we don't stop and think about how hard it is to be a politician. And on the one hand there's that, and then on the other hand, it's hard to trust the politicians we have when we see corruption, when we see them making mask mandates, and then they catch 5,000 of them going out without masks around people and whatever else. And and that's not about politics. I'm not saying good bad mask mandates. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about when you do that and then you don't follow through on it, and you're not getting down there, and also this most recent thing, it reminded me of The Rock and Oprah and them getting caught with their hand in the cookie jar, and everybody and their dog being upset about out this, because as they wanted to, they're going to raise money, but they're not getting in there like Noadon and lifting the burden of the, it's easy to say things. Yeah. And it's easy to, and I've seen this on both political parties and everywhere in between and whatever else. It's easy to say, oh yes, this.
Yeah.
It's harder to go and actually, it's easy to go for a photo op to a soup kitchen. It's harder to go every week to a soup kitchen, you know, and or whatever else. And just looking at this, like we've been talking, there's a lot of real leadership lessons in here, like big ones.
No, it's true. I mean, something that Lord, we're going politics and religion in the same video. We're gonna get demonetized. Oh wait, we already are. Okay, sorry.
Not because of that. We didn't do anything wrong. We're not canceled yet. Dang it.
Anyway, but my pastor always says, like, you're gonna see me be the same person outside the pulpit as you will up here, and I've found that that's kind of like even beyond religion and whatever, just as being a good leader. And being a good person in general, like two-facedness and the whole like being one thing when you're trying to lead somebody, just like you said with the mask mandates or with any kind of humanitarian aid or any kind of thing. Like it's easy to say, hey, I'm going to send you $1 billion to help fix this problem in your nation. And it's harder to sit down and spend time and actually figure out, okay, how can we actually help these people? And what can I do outside of my normal job to go, you know, figure out how to fix these problems? Or, you know, I don't know. Yes, it's very true. Mm-hmm. And that's where, you know, it is a good place to learn from people like Dalinar, people like Kaladin in this book, to be able to say, like, you've got to be a little more human in your thought process, and not so what is the term I'm thinking of, like the being above and looking down, like the whole, like guiding from above and being the puppeteer. It's got to be more like, I don't know, you know, I'm losing it, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So no, I like that a lot. I think it's it's still self-help, right? Leadership is a self-help. Isn't that a
well, yeah, it's all related.
Yeah. Anyway, so there's the quote that Dalinar's, he's got, I guess, internalizing thoughts about the Parshendi and when they started the whole war and fight. He said, but he'd seen them during those early days, interacted with them. They were primitive, yes, but not brutes, not stupid. We never really truly understood them, he thought. I guess that's the crux of the problem. It stood out to me that that even then, like even without the knowledge of the visions and what comes in the future, Dalinar already seemed to be like, why are we doing this? Mm-hmm. A little bit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is kind of the whole, I mean, there's so many layers to this book and so many like, you know, ecological and economical and all the different words, things. But the Parshendi and that struggle and the slavery stuff that's in there and the people being less than people or you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. That whole thing is like probably the hardest hitting, I guess, for me, besides the stuff with Kaladin, some of his depression stuff, but there's just I guess everything else in the world, especially when you go through something traumatic, everything else in the world kind of gets real small. Things become less important when you realize, you know, that life is precious and all the things. And it just kind of makes you sad when you think about how we treat each other. And I'm not, again, we don't have to get political and be all whatever, but it's just sad how...
Not ascribing motives.
It's just sad how just because there's a little bit of difference of opinion on a politic or a religious belief or a, you know, what should and shouldn't be done in a certain situation, we allow that to make us act less human to each other, or less. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean it never really quite ceases to amaze me in this particular book how early so many themes are in here, and this, because we don't know anything about the Parshendi right now, like in the Way of Kings. We don't know that they're, we've seen just little hints, like they sing when they fight, and there's something very intelligent going on there with that. They also have shards, and we've seen these things, right? Yep. But we don't know anything about it. But I think this is that quote is the first time we see any POV character consider, but maybe they're not they're not barbarians. Yeah. Maybe they're not, and it's so easy. Exactly what you're talking about. It's so easy to, when we don't seek to understand and seek to get to know people and find out more about them, it's so easy to see them as the other, and you see in this world, I'm not, I'll put the tinfoil hat away in a second. Don't worry. But, it's very easy to see that there are people in the world that want strife and want some people to fight other people and all these other things. I mean, that's very clear. And I'm not trying to say who the people are. I'm not talking about lizard people. I'm not doing any of that. That's not really what I'm saying. But I am saying that there are absolutely people in the world who stoke these conflicts in order to benefit from those things. And we see that already in this here. We see with Szeth specifically, and the machinations of them him being hired and him being bought and sold by these different people, and all of this stuff happened. And these people, the general Alethi people, they don't know that the Parshendi are not bad, so to speak, and whatever else, and they don't know, and they don't, and so we see all of these things, but there are people on Roshar that want this conflict, and so there's so many things that mirror here, and that is such an important thing in our. I'm not a moral relativist. I'm a Christian. I can't be a moral relativist. I think there are some things that are wrong. I think murder is wrong. I think that's not okay, for example, and whatever else. But even having said that, it is important to take the time to know the other people. Yeah. And the internet is terrible for that.
No, I completely agree. What's really sad is that just because we don't see eye to eye, and it's becoming even more like, I remember when I was a kid, it was kind of like that. If you didn't see eye to eye with somebody, you're an enemy. But then you can, kind of be friends on the weekends maybe, but nowadays it's like, you don't see eye to eye on one or two key subjects, and maybe just one key subject. And it's not even a big, huge thing, or maybe it is a big, huge thing, but you don't see eye to eye. And now all of a sudden that person is not even human to you. Like that's an evil, no good doer person that should die. And it's like, well, wait a second, just because he thinks this one thing, or maybe he thinks completely separately. I mean, yes, there are vast different thinkers across the board. Sure. But it shouldn't matter. Honestly, it shouldn't matter whether it's somebody who thinks one different,
and a lot of things shouldn't.
Yeah. It shouldn't. To be able to be treated human, it should not matter what you believe. Yeah. Like what your thought process is. I mean, even if you are a sociopathic killer, sure, we treat you humanely. We may find that we need to put you somewhere that keeps you away from doing that to people, but sure, we treat you humanely. I mean, anyway, it's sad. It's sad. It's very sad.
So another interesting foreshadowing connection that I noted that I think is really cool, and wouldn't have picked up in a first time read, but on a reread, it kind of really jumped out to me.
Mm-hmm.
But we get the scene where finally Adolin really stands up to Dalinar. He yells at him in front of everybody and whatever else, and he's at what if you are going nuts? And of course, then we see Dalinar for days dealing with that, and has lots of repercussions, and some that which we haven't even seen yet in this section. But then the very next chapter, after having done that, we get Kaladin yelling at his mom, and we get this, and both of them are upset with their fathers and with the perception of the people, their fathers. And I thought it was a super interesting comparison because, it's a connection betwing Kaladin and Adolin, which we see that grow and develop, later, and whatever else, they haven't even met yet, won't for a while yet, but or a little while yet, but it was interesting too because they were mirrored in reverse as well, because Adolin is upset at Dalinar because he's like, people think you're going crazy,
saying terrible things
and
about
you probably are going crazy.
Yep. And
he was wrong. He was not correct. Dalinar was not going crazy. The visions were real. Mm-hmm. And then Kaladin, on the other hand, was upset because people were talking bad about his father about something that he supposedly did, aka stealing the spheres,
which he did not do.
What he did do, which he did in fact do the thing.
Yes.
He did, and we get these reverse, like he's upset because on the one hand, or upset because he's telling lies about this thing that it appears like you are doing, but it's actually not wrong.
Yeah.
Then we're telling lies about, and absolutely standing up and saying, no, I know you didn't steal these spheres, but it turns out you did. So they're like trusting in the wrong direction
side.
In both cases, which I thought was really fascinating.
That is super interesting.
Yeah,
that's super interesting. That the love. I don't know. It's not love-hate, but it's the connection between Kaladin and his father is a very interesting one. Adolin and his father, it's a more, we've seen that trope in a lot of things. We've got this dad who is relatively proud of his son, and son is, wants to strive to be dad. I mean, that's kind of basically their relationship. Dad's not great and perfect to that son, and you find, he actually ends up being a more perfect father figure for Kaladin later on. But anyway, but Kaladin and Kaladin's dad's relationship is also a thing that we see, but it's so interesting because his father has expectations of him that are, to basically follow in his footsteps. And he thinks so, it's how we all get when we think about something. It's like, this is the truth. This is my truth, right? This is my truth, that you cannot be a soldier because it's a terrible thing. And then instead of working himself into becoming the thing his father wants him to be, or instead of completely opposing that thing and becoming someone terrible, he goes down his own road. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's where it's much more compelling story than it could have been if it had been, I don't know, what's his name? You keep bringing him up. The traitor guy. Moash.
Yeah.
If it had been Moash with the same father figure, and he, his dad's altruistic and wants him to be this perfect thing, and he ends up being the terrible exact opposite. Right. But Kaladin actually fulfills his father's wishes. This is where I'm trying to get. Sorry, my point took forever. Kaladin actually fulfills his father's wishes of protecting people. It's just not in the way that Kaladin's father wanted him to.
Sure.
And so anyway, that's just my favorite part about their relationship. And yeah, anyway,
that's a huge struggle in this, throughout, but especially in this first book, is Kaladin trying to decide, and he revisits it a few different times, even in Rhythm of War he does, revisits the idea of can you protect someone with the spear? Can you save lives? Can you do good with that? And that's absolutely a central thing. And I'd say we'll probably talk a lot more about Kaladin's father, Lirin, when we get to Rhythm of War and whatever else. I really can't stand Lirin. I think he's an awful father. And like I said, I'll give more detail on that later. Who knows how long this video is going to end up being by the time it gets edited and whatever else. Got a lot of things we can talk about. But the one thing I did want to note is what you were saying is, in addition to that, is, you're talking about his father pushing him into his own ideals, which, that like teaching your kids what you believe, that's a good thing, right? Yeah. I think there's also, I don't know that a lot of people discuss this, but probably, I don't know, whatever. But he also, there's a certain amount of wanting to live through Kaladin, because I think it's very clear, and you see snippets of this already in the flashbacks that we've gotten, that that Lirin is sad that, it's a weak word, but he wishes that he would have been able to, at a young age, go to Kharbranth and gotten that full training as a surgeon. And he laments that if he could have done that, he could have done better and could have been whatever else. And so I think not only does he want Kaladin to become a surgeon because he thinks that's the most honorable thing ever, in direct opposition to being a good Vorin and person, and whatever, but so it's that, but then it's also, he's kind of, which is generally a bad thing for parents to do, but an easy temptation as parents to try to vicariously live through our kids. And I think we see that strongly with Lirin, that's something that he desires to do and struggles with, and probably doesn't even realize he struggles with, which is, there's blind spots. There's so much depth to these. That's why Stormlight Archive is the best of Sanderson series, in my opinion. Mistborn and other things have a lot of depth, but this, there's just so much in there. The fact that we can discuss for 45 minutes a 10 minutes of reading, not really, but you know what I'm saying. There's 200 pages worth of exactly. We've already talked about a handful of foreshadowing type things, but we thought we would hit a few real specific foreshadowings, and things like foreshadowing. Not all these are specifically foreshadowing and connections to later bits and things. So what's the first one? Okay, so I'm going to just read directly out of the book. Wherever sprayed droplets fell, the brush grew instantly green, as if it were throwing paint. The brush wasn't dead, it just dried out, waiting for the storms to come. Cal watched the patches of green slowly fade back to tan as the water was absorbed. So basically the thought behind this foreshadowing is it's a foreshadowing of Kaladin's story, his whole arc. Of basically feeling like he is, I keep saying basically. We already discussed basic Stanley, white girl. Sorry. But he is very convinced that and has been, since the beginning of the book in current time, has been convinced that he is too far gone. That there's nothing left for him. I've done all, at least after the sequence where he becomes the slave and is the bridge runner. And so
this foreshadowing of, hey, just because it looks dead, just don't. It's almost a don't judge the book by its cover just because it looks dead.
Yeah.
But I love the words of the brush wasn't dead; it was just dried out, waiting for the storms to come. And the storms are the things, not just the water, not just the wet, but the storm, because there's a lot of storms to come in his future. Storms are the things that bring him out of his dead state, his tan state.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next one we wanted to talk about is this scene in the same flashback, I think. I don't necessarily have to read the quote on this one, but where we get a picture. This is kind of flashback, flash forward, because we've already kind of seen some of this, sort of, or at least strongly hinted at. But we see Caladan talking to these friends when he's hanging out with Laurel, and one of them, whatever his name is, Ben or something. What is his name? Who knows? Jost. Yeah, Jost. Jost says his dad won a shard blade, killed a shard bearer, but then it was stolen from him, which we know is the exact same. And we get this foreshadowing that that's exactly what happens to Caladan, that they're not going to let Dark Eyes win a shard blade. That's not going to happen. This is all fake hope, whatever else. And then it's also interesting that we get this idea, and this I can read. We get Laurel coming in with her tinkling laughter, and Caladan, as he's thinking about this, as he's thinking in his head about this laughter, he describes it as a different kind of laughter than he normally heard from her, much more subdued and kind of annoying, which, we see in an earlier flashback that he knows her laughs and he knows her smiles, and he's, in love in his young prepubescent state, and whatever else, but he wouldn't know what that meant, and he doesn't know why she keeps trying to tell him to go win shards so he can be Light Eyes too, because he's an idiot little kid, because all little kids are idiots. This is just a thing. We all were at one point, and maybe still are, but that is I think pretty strong foreshadowing that their relationship is going to break down over time and not always going to be good. He starts to see her as not just Laurel, but kind of annoying and all those things. So
no, that's a good one. So at one point in that same scene that Sean was just talking about, Jost says to him lordling, which is foreshadowing for poor Caladan for the rest of his life, that everyone is going to call him lordling. Pretty much. So that was kind of a funny and interesting thing that nickname has followed him since childhood. And then there's a scene in current day where he pulls the spheres out to pay, what is his name?
The shopkeeper guy. Whatever his name is.
He's anyway, shopkeeper that he gets the medical stuff from. And the shopkeeper's like, "Oh, what are you trying to do? Give me dun spheres?" And he's like, "They had light in them, just the other day, or maybe he gave me fading ones or whatever." Anyway, that is definitely some hard foreshadowing, and there's several scenes like this throughout that it's like, I thought that sphere had, like, why is this dark now? It turned dark so fast. Like, somebody's screwing me over. No, it's not because of that. It's because you have the power.
Exactly. The next piece of foreshadowing that we've been getting subtle bits of foreshadowing almost every time Syl is on the page. We get on page 262, at least in the hardback editions, we get the scene where Caladan notes that not all Windsprint act alike, and that she's evidence of that, and all of those things. We keep getting subtle hints that she is, of course, not a Windsprint. I don't know if this is really foreshadowing as much as it's just like hints and laying that foundation and the groundwork and all that. And then after that is that we get the scene with Kadesh, the Ardent, and where Adolin is talking to Kadesh and basically being like, "Hey, is my dad crazy? Help me, please." And Kadesh is a super interesting character. all we see him a lot longer than this as well. And we get this strong idea. He talks about, he says, I know something of what it is to be haunted by death. This is Kadesh speaking, and destruction of war. I see it in your father's eyes, much of what I have felt, but worse. And we get, I think you mentioned in the last section that we didn't really get much, and we still don't have a ton. We don't really get much of Dalinar's struggle and Dalinar's his past. We don't get as many hints in the previous section to his past. But in this section, I felt like we got several hints to the horrors that he has witnessed and enacted, and all of these things. And we also get
the name which he cannot remember.
Right, exactly. We get all of that stuff. Hints that all of those things are going on and all of that. So. Yeah.
So the next foreshadowing that we found, looked up, whatever, not found as we were reading through, page 299. There's the quote that's, "The old thrill, the sense of battle consumed him. It did not enrage him as it did some men, but everything seemed to become clearer, crisper. His muscles moved easily. He breathed more deeply. He came alive." And so this passage is hinting and talking about the thrill, obviously, and hinting at Odium's connection to Dalinar specifically, and how the thrill is tied in differently and much deeper into Dalinar than, thrill is everywhere with all the men on Roshar, and that's why they're having this whole battle and the things that we talked about in the previous thing about not treating each other humanly. They're okay with all this killing because they get enraged by it. But anyway, so it's connecting Dalinar to Odium and his pervasive influence on Dalinar's life. So that thought about Odium and his super tight groove with Dalinar. I don't know where I'm going with this. Have I ever said that I don't know what I'm doing? We don't know what we're doing. So, but his super tied in connection with Odium is also seen a little bit later, and in another foreshadowing when he's running along and he sees, he all of a sudden has a thrill come on him and he sees bodies and realizes these men are dead, and he's able to resist the thrill. And that's foreshadowing then again later when Odium tries to fully take hold of Dalinar. He's able to actually resist him, and it's not a foregone conclusion, even though it feels like it's going to be. So, What else did we find?
So the last bit of foreshadowing, maybe this one's a maybe, but maybe a hopeful maybe for some of you, and is because it ties in potentially to Stormlight 5 even. And that is, so we get toward the end of this little 200-ish page section, we get the quote, "He stood there," Dalinar stood there for a long time, looking down on the plains as if a god far above. And this is when he's talking to Royan, I think, and trying to convince him to do a joint plateau assault or whatever else is kind of the context for this thing. So that jumped out at me as I was reading that passage, of him standing there as if a god from above. So the wonder and the question for you guys that we can kind of leave this foreshadowing bit is that a poetic simile from Brandon? I mean, yes, it is that, but is it also foreshadowing that the semi-popular fan theory is accurate, that Dalinar is eventually going to take up the reconnected shard of honor and become a god above and whatever else,
among men,
and all of those things? And is that a connection, or is it just Brandon waxing an elephant or something? And so I
don't know where you're going with waxing an elephant. I heard wax and then thought Wayne, and anyway, going down a whole different rabbit trail.
So that was through chapter 27.
Yep.
Our next, hopefully we remember to put this in at the beginning as well, but our next reading is going to be through chapter 42. So look forward to discussing all of that with you guys. Look forward to putting some more content out, and we're enjoying this Stormlight reread. Hope you guys are as well. Let us know in the comments what you're liking about this. What insights are you gleaning, and are you ready for Jonathan and I to quit talking about it? We'll see you in the next one.
Later.
Bye-bye.